Here we go. Factoring quiz number 3. Fan. Cirky. And I'll even zoom in a bit more because some of you are getting used to the back row. The other reason I do shuffle you folks around is it's tough to see in the back row. My new computer that I got over the summer, it looks like the screen resolution is slightly smaller than my one last year, so none of you had me last year. It was easier to read from the back row. I'm going to be putting in for a larger projector screen and seeing if I can move this back and get the image better, but that'll take like 5 months to do the paperwork. So, says, what are the instructions? Factor, the math F word, not the F word you're thinking of. What's the first thing that I always, and you know what? Probably they're going to start out with a GCF question. In fact, probably on the test, I'll probably ask you roughly in the same order that I taught you the stuff. Giving you a little hint. In other words, I'm willing to bet the very, very last question won't be GCF and nothing else. It might be GCF and a combo, but probably the first factoring question will be GCF. There is one. I can factor out a 4, an x cubed, and a y squared. Half mark for the GCF if I was marking this. And then I think I have a 2 left behind and a y squared, a minus, an x. Oh, I think that's it there. I would give you a half mark for the GCF and then a half mark for the second bracket being completely correct. Or you can say a half mark off for each thing that's wrong. There's 3 expressions in there. Number 2, GCF? Nope. Now what? Before you go any further, count how many terms there are. Jake, how many terms are there? Is there a minus sign in the middle? Is the first term a perfect square? Yes. Is the second term a perfect square? I think this is, I know this is, if it matches, if I answer yes to all those questions, it's difference of squares. It factors into 2 brackets. Square root of the first term, square root of the last term, and then one's minus, one's plus, or one's plus, one's minus, but you're going to have a 5x plus 4 and a 5x minus 4, half mark for each bracket. By the way, let's suppose this was the test and I finished it early. Would I hand it in? No. What would I do instead, Sarah? I would, on a scrap piece of paper on the back, I would foil all these out and see if I get my original question. I should. That's how factoring works. Factoring is the opposite of simplifying, but we call it foiling. Number 3, GCF? No. How many terms are there, Kirkland? 2. Minus sign? Does not factor, prime, can't, whatever, if you wrote something like that. If you tried to factor it, no, it doesn't. This is one that really annoys people because they see perfect square plus perfect square. There is actually no way to factor perfect square plus perfect square. Looks like it should. Nope. Number 4, GCF. Nope. How many terms? 3. Oh, Ty, is there something right here in front of the squared term? No, then these are the easier ones. And I say easier in that these are the ones we could do in our head. They're still tricky. This is where you said, I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to positive 20 and add to negative 9. You said an x squared at the front gives me an x there and an x there. A positive 20 add to negative 9, negative 5, and negative 4, or negative 4, negative 5. Yeah, half mark for each bracket. Number 5. GCF? No? Yeah, I think there is, isn't there? There's a 2 and an x. And what I said to you was, Cole, in grade 9, I would have put a little out of 2 next to this question, and my kids would have said, oh, 2 marks, 2 steps. Not anymore. We expect you to get in the habit of always checking your bracket. This is going to be a 2-stepper. First, when I factor this 2x out, I get x squared plus 12x plus 32. If you stopped there, that gets you a half mark. But this actually goes further. You see, the 2x can drop down like a domino. Brendan, this here will factor. How many terms is there, Brendan? 3. Is there something in front of the x squared right there? Nope. Okay, if this does factor, it's going to be, I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 32, positive, and add to positive 12. There are 2 numbers that multiply to positive 32 and add to positive 12. It's going to factor into an x plus 4, an x plus 8 with a 2x in front of it. One mark. Okay. No free hints this year anymore. Number 6. Carmelina, GCF? No. How many terms? 3. Oh, is there something in front of the squared term? Okay, these are the new ones. This is actually Math 10. This is where now I'm going to look for, and this is where I start showing my work a lot more. This is where, Brandon, I get way more paranoid. I got Brandon and Brandon. That's not going to be confusing. I got Jake and Jake. That's not going to be confusing. Good gosh. Anyways, I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 24, that times to 24. Nate, you see where I got the 24 from? First and last. And they're going to add to 14. What are they? So off in the margin, I go 12, comma 2. What that means is I'm going to drop the 3x squared down. I'm going to drop the plus 8 down, but I'm going to decompose this 14x into a 12x and a 2x, or a 2x and a 12x. Now what? How many terms now, Jake? 4. Grouping, not groping, grouping. Cover up the last 2. GCF from the first 2. 3x. And left behind, I'll have an x, a plus, and a 4. Cover up the first 2. GCF from the last 2. 2. And left behind, I'll have an x and a 4. How do I know I'm right? What was my error check on this line that was built in? Jordan? Brackets are identical. Jordan, how do I write the answer? It's going to be 2 brackets. One of my factors is going to be a 3x plus 2. And my other factor is going to be the common factor that appeared in both terms, x plus 4. Foil it out and check. It works. Mickey, number 7 is going to be the same idea, except it's got negatives and positives, which means it's a bit trickier yet. GCF, no. Something in front of this, 3 terms, something in front of the squared term, yes. Then Curtis, I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 40 and add to negative 3. 5 and 8, some combination. Which one? Negative 8 and positive 5. Okay, or positive 5, negative 8. So I'm going to decompose. I drop the first term down. I drop the last term down. But this middle term, I'm going to break up into a negative 8x and a positive 5x, which is still a negative 3x technically, but I've decomposed it, Katie. How many terms now, Katie? Grouping, not grouping. GCF from the first 2. Let's do that. Sorry, it's supposed to be an equal sign, honest. What's the GCF in the first 2 there? There is one. Yeah, just an x. There will always be an x if you're doing this right. And I'll have a 5x minus 8. What's the GCF of the last 2? Positive 1. 5x minus 8. Final answer, 5x minus 8, x plus 1, half mark for each bracket. Scrolling back up. GCF, no. 3 terms, yeah. Something from the squared, yeah. And hopefully you're reaching the point, Brendan, where the questions you ask are almost instantaneous. Hopefully you're at the point where you glance at this and you're already into your strategy. That's why we've done so much practice. That's what we hope to get to. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to positive 14 and add to negative 9, negative 7, and negative 2. Drop the 2x squared down. Break the negative 9x into a negative 7x and a negative 2x, and the plus 7 drops down like a domino. How many terms now? 4. So Carl, grouping, not groping, grouping. GCF from the first two. And I'll get an, not 2x, Mr. Dewick, good gosh. Just an x, Mr. Dewick. And I'll get a 2x and a minus 7. GCF from the last two. Now I was going to pull out a positive 1. Does the positive 1 actually work? How can I tell, Grayson? I did a little bit of math in my head and I noticed the brackets are not the same. That's why that error check is so handy. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to pull a positive 1. What am I going to pull out? I'm going to factor out a negative 1. And that's going to give me a positive 2x and a negative 7. Are my brackets the same now? Woohoo! Grayson, what's my final answer, kiddo? I agree. I'm going to go x minus 1, but I would take negative 1 plus x, as long as your x is positive. Is my x positive? There is an invisible plus sign in front of it. I didn't bother writing it. And as long as your 1 is negative, is my 1 negative? Yes. I think this one looks cleaner, though. I think the negative 1 plus x looks scarier. It does not. We're not used to seeing it that way, but it's right. Half mark for each bracket. Number 9, the next few questions will involve more than one step. I probably won't tell you that on the test. Yep.
On the first one?
On the first one, number 8. I could have. You get the same answer, don't you? Yeah? It doesn't, what I've been saying, for what it's worth, Jordan, it doesn't matter which order you write those two numbers down, which is the nice thing about this system. Our work will look different, so your bracket would have been different on this line from my bracket. You probably have a, let me do it in my head real quick. You have an x minus 1 in your brackets, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, but did we end up with an x minus 1 and a 2x minus 7? Yep. I guess there's also an argument you could say, oh, I could do it the other way if I have time on a test and check my answer, because I better end up the same way. Sure. That's maybe overkill. I find if I FOIL it out and it works, I figure that's enough practice. Check. More than one step, usually that means is GCF first. And I think I said, I won't give you this hint on the test. I won't say, hello, two-steppers. I'll expect you to start cluing in. Although, let's think a little bit. Caitlin, do you think the very, very, very first question is going to be a two-stepper? Say no. Because tests in math usually go from easier, easier, medium, medium, tougher, tougher, nastiest. So probably the two-steppers won't be in the first couple questions. Anyhow, GCF, there is one. I can factor out a 5. And I get 4x squared minus 9. Am I done? Oh, that bracket is minus sign, perfect square, difference of squares. This actually is going to factor into a 5, a 2x minus 3, and a 2x plus 3. Number 10. GCF, no. How many terms? 2 minus sign, yep. Perfect square, yep. X squared plus 9, x squared minus 9. Am I done? No. Which one of those factors further? Does the x squared plus 9 factor further? Nope. I saw some of you nodding your heads. It looks like it wants to. Is there a plus sign? 2 terms? We don't have a rule for plus. In fact, you know what? That's question number 3 that didn't factor, isn't it? Question number 3 that didn't factor was a squared plus 9. So if you did half mark off, this is going to drop down as an x squared plus 9, but this will factor into an x minus 3 and an x plus 3. How would you mark that, Mr. Duke? Half mark off for each bracket that's wrong. Number 11, I see a GCF of 2. and I get 4x squared plus 16x plus 7. Does this bracket still factor further? Let's see. Is there 3 terms? Yes, there are. Is there something in front of the squared? Yes, there is. If it factors, I should be able to find 2 numbers that multiply to 28, see where the 28 came from, and add to 16. 14 and 2, this does factor then. And by the way, that's how you can check if something factors. If you do that, are there 2 numbers that multiply to blah and add to blah? If you can find those 2 numbers, you know it does factor. If not, it doesn't factor. What are the 2 numbers? 14 and 2. So I'm going to drop this 2 bracket down. I'm going to drop the 4x squared down and the plus 9, but I'm going to break this 16x up into a 14x and a 2x. I'm going to drop the 2 down. GCF from the first 2 terms. 2x bracket, 2x plus 7. And this is a very messy looking 7. Let's make that so it looks like a 7, not like a 9. GCF from the last 2 terms, I think positive 1, 2x plus 7. Wow, stuff just vanishing like crazy here. Whoa, come back. Final answer. In front of everything, there should be a 2. And then you should have 2 brackets. One of your brackets is going to be a 2x plus 7. One of your brackets is going to be a 2x plus 1. Half mark off for each bracket that's missing. Means if you're missing 2 of the brackets, number 12. Which value for k would make that a perfect square trinomial? Well, what we're really saying is I'm pretty sure if it was something all squared, what would give me a 9x squared? What would I have had in the front of the bracket? A 3x, I'm pretty sure. What would give me a positive 25? Well, a positive or a negative 25, but since this is positive, I'm pretty sure it's, sorry, a positive or a negative 5. Since this is positive, I'm sure it's positive 5. If you FOIL that out, what number ends up right there? I think, is that right? Those are tricky. Don't kid yourselves. Can you give yourself a nice clear score out of, count 'em, 12, please? If you need to lawyer with me, now is the time. Hello, where'd my little recordy thing go?